let's get started. This is engineering management, and it is, I don't know what week this is. I lost track already. But we're still finishing the MIT lecture number 2. I was talking about agility, and now with this new microphone system, you guys in the back can hear me. This is going to be good for the Android class, actually, because the guys in the back can't hear me. There's more people in that class. But okay, so hopefully I'm going to move it farther away because it's giving me feedback already from my system over here, but we'll see what happens. All right, so I want to finish up with this lecture so that we can start in with strategic alliances and strategic advantages, which is our next topic. So let me finish this lecture that we have been going on for the last couple weeks. But it's good because I've been covering a lot of topics with it. I stopped at agility and the concept of agility, and that's probably one of the biggest buzzwords right now. Agile software development, agile this, agile that, agility this, agility that. It's just nothing. It's like when people started using user-friendly as a buzzword. Actually, cloud is the same concept. Everything's cloud, everything now. So what does it mean? Ability to change, to prosper in rapidly changing environments. Ability for the company to change, to continuously improve the continuity of fragmenting global markets and high quality, high performance customer service, products, services. So agile, just think about change and the ability to change quickly. So if you're going to come up with an agile development process, then you're going to involve the end users, you're going to involve the development team, you're going to have more communication going on, hopefully, and you're going to change rapidly depending upon the feedback that you're getting. So in traditional development, if we're talking about, because Agile is used a lot in software development these days. So I'll give you the software development terminology for it, and then I'll give you the management terminology. So the technical part of it from a software engineering perspective, it's involving everybody, having everybody show up to meetings. It's kind of like, well, it's kind of like Scrum development actually these days, but it's more of adapting quickly and not presetting the process or the development efforts, like predetermining what steps you're going to take, but changing rapidly and adapting the steps to what's needed, which is actually makes more sense if you think about it. So in traditional software engineering, you have like these development models and methodologies like software development life cycles, like the waterfall model as an example. It goes through a series of steps. You don't see anything as a result of those steps for about a year, maybe 6 months to a year, because you go through requirements and analysis and design and prototyping, all these different steps and phases and stuff. And the end user or the consumer or the company that's going to benefit from this development project doesn't actually see anything. So if you take a more agile approach to it, then you involve them earlier on, you reorganize the steps so that you have more of a feedback loop going on and you're working off of the feedback that you're getting to change the requirements and change the analysis and change the design more rapidly. So you're able to evolve it faster with fewer problems in the end. So how does that relate to a company and how does that meet with management style? It's basically looking at and being able to benefit from the rapid changing environment. So if you're on top of things and you're keeping track of what your competitors are doing and you can see the window of opportunity come in, it's taking that window of opportunity. It's constantly looking for the window, and then it's when it does happen, you're going to do something strategically to enable your company to change and adapt and take advantage of that opportunity. What does that mean? Well, when deregulation happens, there's a lot of regulation that gets deregulated, opens up an opportunity for smaller companies or companies in general to participate in something. You also have new technological advances, new opportunities in terms of open markets, changes with the economy. So change is kind of a big word and it's kind of a global concept, but looking at change and adapting to change is really the philosophy behind being an agile company. So the textbook definition of an agile company is a company that can make a profit in markets that are with broad product ranges and short model lifetimes and can produce orders individually and in arbitrary lot sizes. What does that mean? Adapting to your markets, adapting to your market sizes, your customers. So that's kind of like what Dell did actually, and Gateway did some of this as well, coming up with computer lab systems and custom configurations for different markets, for different needs in terms of economies of scale, but also in terms of different product mixes and different products in general. So you're not just making a product and selling a product. You're looking at the customer, you're seeing what the customer needs, you're building what they need, and you're selling them that. So, oh look. Wow. I have to watch out for that. Tapping on the desk. So becoming an agile, here's our Dell in action. Our agility in action. Here's the Dell example, actually. They're probably one of the first companies that took on this approach, which is why they're used in most of the examples. But they're a good example because one of the first to come into this concept and still doing it well, and still having the same model and the same growth, which is excellent. And they've slowed down a little bit, but for the most part, they're still kind of a strong company in terms of what they're doing. So they're focused, so they're customer-focused market and champions of mass consumption. They make huge lots of business systems and computers in general. Built-to-order business, 25,000 on a typical day, tight supply chain management, rarely more than 2 hours worth of parts and inventory. That's pretty good. You're streamlining your costs, you're streamlining your manufacturing, you're making it so your costs are minimal because the cost of the inventory is a huge consideration these days. Plus, they're also customizing and they're doing mass customization. So what's mass customization? Providing individual products while maintaining high volumes of production. So it's customization with like thousands of units that are coming out to adapt to things. So this would be like what the stereo companies actually do. Let's say TV companies don't normally do this. They're just producing mass products. But stereo companies, actually, that's an interesting concept. Every one of the cars on the streets in the U.S. has a stereo in it. And a lot of it's built by OEM. So you buy the car, it has a stereo in the car. But the guys, the Toyotas, the BMW, they don't make the stereos. Panasonic makes them, or Bose makes them. Somebody makes the equipment. They're mass customization equipment for this particular model car, that particular model car. And they're making the equipment fit the model of the car and the needs of the supplier who is basically producing the vehicle with certain specs in mind. So you'll find like the same manufacturer will make the same stereo unit in 3 different model cars that'll be different. So you'll have one that's customized for a Honda, for Toyota, for, I don't know, Mercedes, for BMW. And they're all made by stereo companies. And sometimes it's the same company, but it's a totally different stereo that you're getting in each one of these vehicles with different features, different capabilities, yada yada. Long story short, it's mass customization. It's building huge economies of scale with it, but producing different products. Windows did this for the longest time. They're not really doing it anymore, but before you could buy Windows XP for Gateway, for Compact, for HP. In fact, you'd see it if you went into the system information, you'd see the logo and it'd say OEM. They called it OEM, actually, and that was the OEM era. We're still getting a lot of OEM, original equipment manufacturer. So they OEM it. Microsoft is manufacturing the operating system, but it's customized and it's shipped under different names. So you have the Compact Windows and the HP Windows and the IBM Windows, which is Windows, but it's mass customization. Why did they need to do that? Well, because we have a general purpose operating system running on all this different hardware, and the hardware had different needs. So if you actually got let's say for example, this is just a hypothetical example, the HP Windows, and it said HP and it had the logo on the OEM version, it had the right drivers, it has the right configuration, it has the right setup, it's been tweaked to work better on the HP hardware. So the reason for that mass customization was to make an operating system not so general purpose, but to make it like work specifically on certain hardware, make it function better, perform better. And which is actually the case. If you have one of those old computers, you take off the HP version in this hypothetical, and you put on the regular Microsoft one, it doesn't run as fast. Actually, that's the case in modern day as well. if you get Windows 7 installed and you have the OEM version of it on the hardware, go back to whoever sold you that hardware, Compaq, HP, whatever, and now it's Sony or Lenovo. Actually, Lenovo is an expert at this. They do this, it's all OEM. You buy an operating system that's tweaked for Lenovo. Yes, it's Windows, but it's not the Windows you're getting from Microsoft. It has different drivers on it, it's configured differently, runs better, makes the hardware run better. So you want to do that, which makes it, it's part of the mass customization. It's an example of that mass customization of Windows as an example. Done for a particular reason. It makes the hardware sell better because it makes it perform better. So we have agile competitors. So we're looking at the type of agility, and you're not going to be able to read this from the back of the room, but if you download the slide set, it actually looks pretty clear. If you download the slide set and look at it, you'll see that you can compare different types of agility. So the point I'm making in this particular slide, in this presentation, is that agility is a generic word like user-friendliness, and you have different types of agility, different focuses, depending upon what it is you're talking about in terms of the context of the agility word being used. So it could be applied towards customers, partnering, operational efforts, manufacturing, customer service, technical support. It applies towards everything in terms of the concept. And here's just examples. Being able, in terms of the role of IT, the description, and some examples. For customers, the eBay's customers are its de facto product development team. Actually, they are the customers who use the system. So developing and sharing tips and glitches and things and having communication among the users of the system was their way of providing better customer support, which is actually Gmail and Google's kind of claim to fame on customer agility as well. User-centered testing and development efforts. So partnering, building alliances with different internet companies. In terms of operations, getting large global wholesalers to work together and distribution house in terms of being able to distribute things. So we have this concept of the agile company. So it uses information technology to link people, organizations, and assets together. So we have agile production, I'm saying virtual company, but virtual company is an agile company, by the way. So the slide says virtual company on it. I said agile. However, it is basically an extension off of agile. Virtual is not a company that doesn't exist. A lot of people think, it's a virtual company is like e-business. No, the company does exist. The company might have headquarters. In fact, if you look at eBay, which is a virtual company, also an agile company, take a look at that. They have huge, in fact, it's just down here in San Jose and Campbell, actually, huge corporate offices, like campuses, like with tons of buildings and things. There's no eBay store that you walk into in the state of California, although there are stores elsewhere. For most intended purposes, a lot of people think that the company is just on the internet. It doesn't exist. It's a virtual company. And then you'd be slightly off with the definition of that. So organizations that use information technology link people, organizations, and assets and ideas, which is an agile company and also a virtual company by nature. So I don't actually like the word virtual because it leads to the wrong conclusion. So it's really, if you come back up and compare it to the agile company, and agile, if I had the definition in here, agile company, here it is here. Company that makes a profit in markets and broad product ranges and short model lifetimes and can produce orders individually and in arbitrarily lot sizes. Well, they just adapt better to change. They're flexible. And then say, well, what about one that uses information technology? Well, aren't you using information? Aren't you using your customers if you're adapting to change? Aren't you highly linked to those customers to begin with? And aren't you also using assets and ideas and looking at more current information regarding your organization and who you're servicing as customers? Which is actually kind of funny because you can't ask a virtual or an agile company. It makes no sense to ask them who their customers are because they already, to wonder if they don't know who their customers are. They're the ones who know who their customers are. And their customers are telling them what they're producing, not the other way around, which is actually kind of interesting. So companies like Google and Yahoo and eBay, it's customer driven. The people who are using the products and the services are the ones who are determining what they're going to get next, because they're the ones who are involved in the development, actually, even though you're not technically working for that company. You're a knowledge worker whether you know it or not, because you're developing what features, and you're telling the company by using the features what you like, what you don't like. It's actually kind of interesting. So we have intra-enterprise information systems, and we have intra and inter. So outside and inside the organization, we have infrastructures of IT and IS that work together to accomplish the information sharing. So if you think about it and say, okay, I'm going to be an agile company, or I'm going to be a virtual company, and I'm going to work closely with my customers, I'm going to figure out what they need, and I'm going to produce products for them. And they're going to be customer-centric in terms of how we're going to grow in the future as a company. So how am I going to accomplish that? I need technology support. So building the infrastructure from a technology perspective. So an inter-enterprise information system is one that's implemented from extranets among a company and its suppliers, its customers, its subcontractors, competitors with whom it has formal alliances. So it's not open to the public normally. It's mostly agreements with company A to company B to company C. We all work together. We're almost like an enterprise. Well, we are an enterprise. So by concept, this word enterprise came out, I don't know, about 10 years or so ago. People started calling their company an enterprise. And a lot of people thought, well, enterprise sounds like a big ship, Starship Enterprise. You know, it's a big spaceship from Star Trek. Well, kind of sort of like that, except for enterprises are normally my company, your company, your company, and your company, and your company, and your service all together. That's the enterprise. It's the relationships between all the different partners. And then most people think, well, in the old days, it wasn't partnering, it was competing, being a competitor. But then people realize, well, if you work with your suppliers and your customers and you make them partners and you develop this enterprise, then you're going to get better pricing and better products and better services and better communication with faster. Just get rid of all the, lack of communication and just put it all out there in the open, group everybody together, create an enterprise, and you have a faster running system. So now in American business, the typical scenario is let's all work together. We're all in the business to make money. So if I'm selling an MP3 player, which actually is kind of the Apple route, they stay out of the accessories. They don't sell cases for those iPhones. Somebody else sells the cases. Tons of companies sell the cases. But they produce and they'll pre-produce and pre-distribute the specs for the cases. So when the new version comes out, the new cases can come out simultaneously. You don't have to wait. If you're in agreement, then you can develop an enterprise relationship where you can get cases and headphones and jogging packs or whatever they have, and waterproof this and all, screen protectors and all this products and services and things that work, or service. They don't provide cellular data service. Verizon does, or AT&T does. But what do they need to do that? Well, they need some cooperation with Apple to provide that. Otherwise, the iPhone's kind of useless without service. Well, and then you get an iPod Touch, I guess, is the product. That's the iPhone without service. But long story short, they need those relationships to make the system work. They're not a specialty in accessories, nor do they sell cellular data service. But they partner with companies, and that's an example of an enterprise information system. It would be a system where you buy a phone, you register the phone, you purchase the phone, and maybe at an AT&T store. They're getting the phones from Apple. They're putting their service on the phones. All of the specs on the phone work with their service. And then you get people that unlock them. But yeah, they're designed to work with carriers. And then everybody gets a piece of the pie, or everybody gets a piece of the profit that comes out of that. So when Verizon sells a phone, Apple makes money on the phone sale, and they make money on the service, and vice versa. So virtual company strategies. Here's one from Cisco: virtual manufacturing alliances. Actually, a lot of companies do this today, but Cisco is one of the first people that did that. Actually, alliances to create virtual manufacturing. So you have 3 companies involved in alliances, for example, providing agile build-to-order systems and capabilities of Fiercely competitive industry. Well, if you don't have to own the warehouse, which is kind of an interesting concept. You don't have to own the warehouse. You don't have to train manufacturing. You don't even have to provide any of that. But you get that when you take this virtual approach, because you don't own a warehouse. You have one warehouse, as an example, and the warehouse is making parts and pieces for everybody. And then you need your products assembled, so you contract with another warehouse or another manufacturing facility, probably offshore somewhere. And you have them in an alliance where they're a separate company. You're not a subsidiary, they're just a separate company. But they're working with you to produce your products and package your products and ship it out and everything. Then you have more of a virtual manufacturing alliance. Well, the bookstores run the same way these days. Bookstores don't carry inventory of books. Well, virtual companies that run as bookstores, they don't carry it. Instead, they contract out with publishing houses that have warehouses full of books. It goes from the warehouse to the customer. It doesn't even make it through the lines of the company, but there's an alliance, it's a strategic alliance, to have a cooperation to put together an enterprise to sell books. So, long story short, you don't have a warehouse full of anything these days. If you're selling a product or service, you have an alliance, and you have an agreement, and you have a virtual company organization set up. It's happening really strongly right now with supply chain management. So you don't even have an inventory of parts or pieces or anything either, nor do you have a list of sources that you have to go through. Instead, your sources come to you, go into your supply chain management system that's normally held in intra, not inter. So it's private, it's inside of the organization. And they log in and they figure out what they need, what you need. And they take a look at your inventory, and then they try to work with you to provide you better pricing, better availability, and more timely access to whatever it is you need for manufacturing. And then they will actually ship to the manufacturer that doesn't even go through you. So you have all these strategic partners working together that are giving you this virtual company. So it doesn't mean that the company doesn't exist. It means that the sum of the parts doesn't really exist, actually. So that company that does your manufacturing is different from the company that does your shipping and your packaging. It's different from the company that's doing your marketing. And it's different from your company that's supplying you with the ERP system or supply chain management. They're all separate companies. They're all working together to form a virtual company. And so this picture actually really does give you the bigger picture. And it kind of sums up in a picture what I've been trying to describe here in terms of this virtual company concept, where we have the intranets, which is the networks, IT support, information systems that work among all of the different partners in the system. We have the boundaries of this so-called enterprise, this firm, and then we have all of the alliances. So here's an alliance with the major customers. Manufacturing teams are in here. They have an alliance with a competitor who provides services that are complementary. So if this were, actually if you think about it, a lot of your computer companies are sort of working like this. They all have the same parts. So your Sony Vaio has the same board and the same chip as the earlier version of the MacBook Pro, made in the same manufacturing plant, came from the same source. Two different products, two different configurations, and the rest of the parts are totally different, but the boards were identical. So, and they're not identical now because they've changed a little bit, but in the beginning, the Intel chips that Apple was using were coming from IBM compatible systems. They're Intel. So, in a lot of systems, and if you go look at the parts and pieces that are inside of your computer these days, they're shared among multiple computers, all from different companies. And some of them are even made in the same warehouse, which is actually kind of interesting. So, that gives us that virtual kind of concept. Alliances with subcontractors, depending upon what kind of product you're building, fabrications, components. The same person that makes the housing on the HP might be making the housing meaning the cover, the material that's supporting up the screen or the keyboard. Actually, a lot of keyboards come from the same place. Keyboards, mouse pads, with the casing, the molding on the case is all coming from similar companies. There's not that many companies that do casing, that do molding or fabrication. So even the paint, even the coloring, if you think about it, breaks down to the same company that's doing the die casting and stuff on everything. So Depending upon what part of the country it was made in, it might actually be using the same materials, raw materials, in terms of its construction as well. If you think about it, a lot of the food that we eat and a lot of the products are done the same way. So you always hear of we haven't heard of it recently, but back in the mad cow day, several years ago, that actually kind of bring all this to light, because it's like, well, bad beef. Well, where's the beef? Well, it's in that fast food restaurant, and it's in that one over there as well, and it's also in this chain, this grocery store was distributing the same meat. You're thinking about it, it's from the same farm with the same mad cow problem. Mad cow was a disease, I guess. I don't know what kind of disease it was. It's kind of been here and gone. There was a problem in the past, and it was because the producer of the raw ingredient had a problem. And so you would look around at all these different products that are all using the same product. And you're like, oh, wow. And then you say, well, this is kind of like a virtual supplier, virtual company. It's like, who company is this? They're all selling the same thing. So you get this with, actually you get this with clothing a lot as well. You get one factory that's building, let's just call them sweaters, or pants or something. And they're sent out to 25 different labels. And it depends on what the guy wanted or whoever ordered it, what specs they gave them or what they wanted to purchase is what style or what configuration you're going to get on the end product. But it's all coming from the same material. It's all the same factory, perhaps with different quality estimates on it, or perhaps with different, different material grades or something. But it's all the same, because there's not, if you're working with the virtual company strategy, it's better to team up with larger companies that are going to provide to a much larger broad base of subcontractors or other companies that are going to use them. So in terms of this company strategy's shared infrastructure and the risk with alliance partners. So if you have a bad season, your supplier is going to have a bad season. If you have a good season, your suppliers are going to have a good season. So you both take the brunt of the profits and the losses associated with it. Nobody likes the product, the quality's bad. Your supplier is not gonna profit from this. In the old days, it was different. In the old days, you would buy something from your supplier. Your supplier wasn't part of the infrastructure. It wasn't a supply. Wasn't, in fact, even calling it a supplier right now is kind of wrong. It wasn't a supplier. It was a partner. So if they sold you as much as they could because they want to make money. But what are you going to do? It's sitting in a warehouse. You have all this extra stuff you can't use. Well, that doesn't happen anymore, because they're not going to sell you that stuff, because they're not going to get paid until you get paid. So, link complementary core competencies together. Yeah, if you're producing a computer, you don't have to be good at casing or fabrications or industrial design or anything like that. You can contract that out. Have a company that's good at that, do your manufacturing and do all that other stuff. And also reduce the concept to cash time through sharing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, you just use a company that does it to your satisfaction. And then you're in good shape. Probably cost you about the same thing anyway. Plus the opportunity cost of not using them is too high, because you don't have 6 months to a year to learn how to do plastics, to do your own molding. No, you're just going to hire a molding company, or partner up with a molding company who's going to do your molding for you, so that you can include that in your casing for your product that you're distributing, which is actually kind of an interesting concept. So increases facilities and market coverage, obviously. Gain access to new markets, share markets of customer, share market or customer loyalty. Migrate from selling products to selling solutions. So it's kind of like how you get parts and pieces that are part of a quality product. You share in the customer's appreciation of that product. Well, like the car stereo that's in the BMW. So they're going to profit from the customer loyalty of wanting to buy that product in the next generation when it comes out, because they know the quality from previous experiences. So this just faded a little bit. So I'm like, wait a minute, it's not picking me up anymore. All right, so creating knowledge and using knowledge and knowledge creating companies is another concept as well. This lecture was on creating strategic alliances and strategic advantages, working through those concepts. So by definition, consistently creating new business knowledge, disseminating it widely throughout the company, and quickly building the new knowledge into your products and services. That's a knowledge-based company. I don't know if I've gotten into the knowledge worker yet in this class, but there's this concept of the knowledge worker that works at a company that creates the knowledge for the company. What do we care about knowledge? About 20 years ago, we never cared about knowledge. We didn't care about anything really. And knowledge is not keeping a database and recording all your sales and transactions, which is a starting point. That's the data that turns into the knowledge. So going back to that hierarchy I probably gave you in the first couple weeks, data plus data is equal to information. Information plus more information equals knowledge. Knowledge plus more information and more knowledge equals wisdom. So in terms of the information hierarchy, we want to get to wisdom, because then we're wise, we know how to make products and services, and we're more efficient that way. When we first start business from the traditional model about 20 years ago, people just didn't even have a good concept. They just spent a lot of money and went into business. And you're thinking about it now, nobody would do that. It seems insane. But American business has grown actually throughout the years. Now they know more about the business before they started, hopefully, because they're capturing knowledge from previous experiences, knowledge from businesses that exist already. They're developing new knowledge, and then they're going into business. And then when they go into business, they're using that knowledge to grow their business, to get to wisdom, hopefully. So yeah, keeping track of data is a starting point. Getting a nice database system where you're capturing all sales and transactions, plus also all work product. So all of your employees are contributing to the knowledge of the company, and they're building it, and then you're also sharing it. You're disseminating the knowledge. So that's how, actually you see knowledge work systems like Salesforce.com actually is a good one these days, Salesforce, because they're a knowledge dissemination system. You're putting your leads in there. You're following up on it. You're seeing everybody else's leads. It's a Salesforce automation tool, but mostly it's a knowledge capture device. You know who you've been talking to. You know who your customers are. You know you're trying to recruit them. In fact, we use that here. You're trying to recruit them to be students, or you're trying to sell them a product, or you're trying to better serve them. They're already customers of your organization, but you're trying to help them, support them. So you use that as an automation, or a way of automating your knowledge working. And then you can print reports out, and you can say, well, how well are we doing? And it's not really how well are our salespeople doing, because you can actually do that. You can put goals on your salespeople and say, hey, you know what, you have to be at this level. And you have to be producing this amount of work quality or this amount of work product per day or per month or something. And then you can follow up and test to see, run a report to see if they actually know how to do it, or if they actually are doing it or achieving their numbers. Where if you're doing it manually, it might be hard to disseminate that information among the entire team. Banks do this all the time, financial institutions, schools, any company that's number driven. They need so many customers, or they need so many leads or something, which, your numbers, education is a numbers system. You need to ensure that you have a certain number of students so that you can make a profit, or you can break even, or you can achieve your goals. Have so many classes for so many students. It's all scheduling. So it's a numbers game. So being able to automate that is, and putting it into a knowledge work system is kind of key to being efficient and also being accurate with that. So we have different types of knowledge, and you can actually study knowledge as a concept. Actually, it's a business concept. Explicit and tactic knowledge come into place. Explicit knowledge is the data, the documents, the written things stored in computers. Those are your sales numbers. Those are every time your target store sells a product, it gets put into the system. The inventory gets deducted from the product that's sold. If it goes down to a certain inventory level, a reorder submission happens automatically so that the product is actually added to an invoice, and the invoice gets added to a shipping request, and the product gets sent to the store and it gets put back on the shelf without any humans actually being involved in any of that decision making. That's explicit knowledge. Tactic knowledge is how-to, or knowledge which resides in workers. It's skill knowledge. Having an employee that can sell a product, that has sales skills, or who has customer service skills, that's knowledge in terms of skill level. And being able to define that, capture it, and then make it work for everybody else in the department is a way of disseminating that knowledge and making the knowledge work for you. So, also trained, engineers who know how to program. That's tactic knowledge. Artists who know how to draw. That's tactic knowledge. It's not documented. How do you document? How do you tell someone how to draw a portrait? You can't do it. Or how to be a good customer service person. You can give them a bunch of stuff that they're supposed to follow, but how do you know that they're going to react properly when the customer starts yelling at them, or I don't know, they're having a bad day or something, or all those different scenarios that come up with customer service people. And it's always, some weird problem that occurs once you're not getting good service. But in reality, it's the person doesn't have the knowledge or the skill level to actually perform the job correctly. So knowledge management, by definition, is techniques, technology, systems, rewarding and getting rewards for getting employees to share what they know, how to make something better, how to accumulate the workplace knowledge, enterprise knowledge. It's all about communication, which is actually kind of funny because in this day of information technology and information systems and all this information sharing, as a society, we're getting dumber. It's dumb. It's dumb phones. It's dumb media. It's not smart media, not smart. Because we're sharing dumbness and we're dumbing people down. So no longer are they individual consumers or individual contributors. They're part of the problem is what the situation is. Which is actually kind of interesting because it's like you'd think that better communication, better resources, better information would lead to more productive people. Problem is when it's there, you don't get it. When it's there, you get it. You don't have to contribute to it. You don't actually have to create that knowledge. So we're turning into appliances. You see this with a youth, actually. You see this with America, with high school kids who can't interview. They can't hold on. They can't actually hold a conversation either. They don't have social skills because all they know is BTW and LOL and ROLF or whatever, rolling on floor laughing or whatever. They don't actually know how to construct a sentence, actually be involved in a conversation. They rely upon the technology and they've learned how to use the technology to get to where they are, but they're not getting anywhere. So we have a real lack of skills that are going on in terms of social skills because social media has dumbed them down a little bit. Social networking has dumbed them down. It's a huge problem. In fact, there's an entire scenario going on with a lot of research right now in terms of how, in terms of using technology in education. So all of the, original, talk about education. We're talking about lower, not higher education. Talk about high schools, grammar schools, and how introducing computers to them at too young of an age makes them dumber. They're not going to excel as fast as if you hold off until they're mature enough to actually use the computer. If we gave you a calculator in first grade, instead of learning 1 + 1 = 2, you could just type the numbers in on the calculator, you're not going to learn that 1 + 1 = 2. You're not going to know your times tables. You're not going to know how to read, how to write, how to communicate, how to speak. Instead, what you're going to do is pick up a computer or calculator. You're going to go 1 + 1. It's actually kind of funny because some of our youth can't read and write English. Or they can't do math. They don't have basic math skills. And then take that and put it into high school. What are they doing in high school? They're writing essays. They're learning concepts, basic fundamentals that they just Google, Google, cut, paste, and send in. It's kind of like how some graduate students actually work these days. You take a programming class, but you don't want to learn how to program. Instead, you just beg, borrow, and steal and copy code and cheat your way through the system. And then in the end, you wonder, well, why did I even take that class if I'm going to do that? And then, what do they really know? Nothing. They don't know anything. They know how to steal code. There's actually a lot. And the funny thing is you figure this out when they go to work for a company. And you go, oh, you're a professional code stealer. You know how to Google. I've seen this code before. No, it's wrong. Because you don't know how to you don't know the fundamentals because you never really took the class. Somebody else took it for you because you used somebody else's work, which is what's happening in high school, and it's happening with basic reading and writing skills. You don't have to read a book anymore. Actually, you don't. You just turn on the audio text to speech. You don't have to read anything anymore. You just turn on and you just listen to it. If you're that lucky, or you skip through the parts you don't like, and just hear what this book is supposed to be about, and then you don't even write your book report. Just go to the internet, cut and paste the stuff, which is terrible. Anyway, long story short, technology is dumbing people down. We're talking about knowledge management here. So using the techniques wisely, and then giving employees the opportunity to contribute the knowledge and capture the knowledge in knowledge management systems, so manage organization learning and business know-how as well. So basically the original problem with knowledge management is employees didn't want to contribute. In fact, they held back information because they thought that led to job security. Actually, programmers did this a lot as well. Don't comment the code. Don't even document the code. In fact, don't even put it on the server. Keep it on your notebook, because eventually they're going to want the source code and they're going to have to beg you for it. You have it. So you had job security kind of thing. And then companies got wise and said, well, all right, so give me the code. Document the code. Use this naming convention so we can understand your code. Write code that's maintainable, that we can hire anybody to maintain, not just you. Make it reproducible, document it, give it to us, it's our property. And then lower your pay. No, just kidding. Well, actually they did, but but make you dispensable, make you so you can we can fire you. Which is kind of the concept now, and you think about it, you shouldn't go into work for a company thinking that they can't replace you. They should be able to replace you. They should be able to hire 5 more people to do your same job, actually. Because that's the nature of how a company is going to survive in the long run. If you're thinking in the company's perspective, the company wants you to be replaceable. If they're putting you in a position where you're not replaceable, there's a problem with that. Because you're human. You're not going to live for another 100 years. You're gonna eventually be replaced. And how are we going to keep the company at the same level of production and effectiveness if we can't replace you? You know, and you talk about the short term versus the long term. Hold on, and before we go to attendance break, if they don't make you replaceable, the company itself is going to be damaged in the long run. That's the point I'm trying to make. All right, attendance. So let me pause this. All right, so we're back. So this is the levels of knowledge management. So during the attendance, you were probably staring at this, maybe not. But what we've got down here is the document management at the lowest level. And this is what I say about capturing sales receipts or capturing data that's been performed by your employees. Not doing very much with it. You're just capturing it. So the knowledge management, the document management, accessing and retrieving documents shared online. A lot of companies only get this far. They don't actually get further on this. So as in engineering management and management in general, what you want to do is get all the way up to the top, to the enterprise intelligence level, which you're not going to get to unless you have the infrastructure built and you have the processes in place. So from an information creation, sharing, and management perspective, you're going to take that from the document management and you're going to build it into some sort of distribution center. So this is where a lot of companies achieve frequently asked questions. They also are able to put together technical support or customer service problem-solving trees or all sorts of different techniques to apply the knowledge to better help the customer or better help the salespeople of some sort. If you can get past that level, which is actually pretty good, capturing and dissimulating it by experts, then you can get up into the business know-how or saying that you should change a feature on a product or you need to create another complementary product or service or you need to discontinue a product for some particular reason, given all of the information you've shared that has come from all of the capture that has occurred. So if you work it as a tree and you manage it sort of in a cycle, then you have the ability to learn from it, to adapt, and to grow the company from it, which is the point made here. So shareware grows up. Case study number 3, how a company cooperates, a cooperative works, software cooperative works, cooperating Anyway, companies paying memberships with an entity entitles them to use any of the intellectual property of a co-op. Actually, it's kind of interesting. It's how a lot of open source. There's too much, even with the speaker. There's too much chatter in here. I'll just wait for people to stop talking. This guy here is on his own little conversation. I can't talk over you. Even with the speaker, I'm having a problem talking over. I see people in the back going, "No, can you just be quiet?" All right, so even with the speaker power. Shareware growing up. In terms of another case study and another analysis looking at it, a lot of open source actually has grown a lot from cooperations between developers who have all worked on something, sharing work, sharing a repository, a finished work product, sharing information, leading to this entire concept of knowledge mining or knowledge and levels of knowledge management. The system itself has promoted, and shareware systems in general, open source initiatives have supported the cooperation, and in the support, it's housed and managed the work product. So now we have products like MySQL as an example, which is a really good database solution that's not owned by anybody. It's a cooperative effort among a lot of different developers to work with it in an open exchange and an open shareware. I just call it shareware. It's different. Not shareware. It's different than open source. But in an open source example, that cooperation and the knowledge dissemination and knowledge discovery and the knowledge working system has really made that possible. So companies are trying to do that with their work products. And also sharing memberships and sharing and taking donations and working back and forth with intellectual property and things among different companies also lends itself to better working end products as well. So benefits in terms of the concept of sharing and knowledge management, decreasing in the total cost of ownership of the software and ownership of the technology. In fact, if we didn't have the IEEE, we didn't have the ability to grow internet, and we wouldn't have 802.11, HIJK, whatever we're up to now, we would still be on A or B. So I don't know if you guys remembered 802.11b, but that was the protocol from the original dial-up A and B, 56K transmission speed, not so fast. I'm so glad we didn't stop at that. And that we're up to, 200, 300, 400, 500 and above speeds, download and upload speeds, which is only facilitated by advancements in the technology. That's through an organization at IEEE, advancements of the protocol, continuing to work on it. It's not just one guy working on it. It's an entire community of developers that are working together on that. So that's the concept in terms of being able to work together, to come up with knowledge as teams and knowledge as cooperations among different companies. Challenge getting members to really collaborate. Communication is not really a challenge, it's the collaboration that's the challenge. A lot of people want to own what they're doing, they don't want to give it up or share it. So without the sharing, it kind of slows down the cooperation, it slows down the growth for everybody. We would still be at 802.11a or B, or whatever we started out with. Actually, it was A and B. I still remember B, actually. We would still be on that if we didn't actually have any collaboration going on. So, or people would try to sell that on their own or something. So they're also, organizations are also constantly striving to achieve competitive advantages. So cooperation among different companies, you might think, kind of deters competition. It can actually create it as well. If you all have the same playing field, it makes you become more innovative in terms of how you're going to succeed over your competition. So given this constant, why does Hansen suggest, well, competition among members shouldn't be an issue because the shared assets don't bring competitive advantages. So the book where this lecture comes from, the author of the book makes that suggestion in terms of not bringing competitive advantage, because it's not the technology that's giving us the competitive advantage, it's what we're doing with it. So if I were to explain and answer this kind of scenario, it's we all want 802.11z. We want the biggest, the best, the fastest. We all want it. So the concept of it being only one organization that's able to offer that, or one company product that's able to offer a service or that compatibility, it's not part of the competitive situation. It doesn't create a competitive market. It's kind of like, holding back. It's actually seen as a negative these days. They want to share it. They want to bring it out. They make the technology available. Let everybody use it. So it's kind of going back to what Apple was doing with all the DRM stuff at one point. They were putting digital rights management on everything. You downloaded it through iTunes. It stayed in iTunes. You never got it out of iTunes. You can only put it on 3 different computers and all these restrictions. Eventually they realized, well, that's not really the way you create a competitive open market for content. You can't do it that way. So they took it all away. Said, okay, we'll give it to you. You can have it. You bought it. You got it. It's yours. Don't worry about it. You can use our system. You can use that system over there. You can use that MP3 player over there. Because that's not what was giving them the competitive advantages, the availability of that song. They can get it anywhere they wanted to. Which is actually kind of funny if you think about digital rights these days and all of the controversy and all of the problems. Customers can get everything everywhere. And actually just think about textbooks in general. They can get it everywhere. So it's not the availability of the PDF or the MP3 file or whatever. It's the service that they're getting and the product that they're using it with, and that's pretty much the value and the content. So, which is actually kind of interesting. Keep the price down, make it available, yet sell it in a different way and compete with it in a different way. Whereas where you're getting that competitive advantage. So potential risks associated with, let's not look at these. Actually, I'm not going to go through the case study because we're not reading this book, nor do we really want to. But let me sum up the lecture itself, which I started a couple weeks ago. It was on information technologies, by the way. It's IT and comparing it with IS and looking at some related topics. And it can support many, and we actually looked at Porter's 5 competitive forces in this lecture as well. And competitive strategies, including cost leadership, differentiation, innovation, and growth and alliance, where that's coming from the Porter's model. IT can help build customer-focused businesses, re-engineering business processes, which is what we talked about in the last lecture last week. And then today, looking at the businesses that are becoming more agile companies, and also creating those virtual communities, and then building knowledge-creating companies as a goal. So that one was lecture number 2. The other lecture that's on my agenda for today is from the Information Innovation series, not the technology one, and this one's number 3. It comes from chapter 3 of Information Innovations, which is an older book, actually. It's at the end of the lecture. In fact, it's in the beginning of the lecture 1, where you'll see that reference in terms of the actual book where this comes from. No need to really get the book. We're not covering information systems in that much detail that we would require you to actually read the entire book. But in terms of the investment and valuing the investment, as an engineering manager, one of the first things you have to do is sometimes, depending upon your job, is actually define the infrastructure, define the technology, define the information systems, the knowledge management, the resources you're going to use in your capacity to perform your job, whether your job is managing people, managing the technology, or managing the development efforts. You're still stuck with that same decision in terms of how am I going to put a value on this system? Do we really need this system? Why should we use this system when we can use that system over there or that one over there? So this particular lecture, and what I'm going to start today and finish next week is probably going to be the case, is putting a value, putting a price on the investment. And so what do we have here? From 1999, the most important discoveries over the next 50 years will likely to become are likely to be ones of which we cannot now even conceive. Actually, I would not agree with that right now, but who knows, it might be actually the case. If you think about the concept of TiVo, concept of smart TVs, internet TV, and all that stuff, about 1999, about 10 years ago, 13 years ago, I think, well, the first TiVos were out actually at that time, and it was DVR recording. But I'm not really sure the consumers actually knew that they could get away without having cable now. In 2013, you don't even need cable service anymore. In fact, your cable companies know that as well, and they're selling you internet service instead, or they're trying to get into that market because they know that's going to go away. because it doesn't support, it can't be supported by modern day technologies. It can't compete with modern day technologies. But did we know that? I don't know if anyone really knew that, which is actually kind of an interesting concept, which is what that quote was kind of trying to make light of. So looking at how organizations can use information systems for automation, organizational learning, and strategic advantage, while looking to a crystal ball and seeing what's going to be in the future. It's essentially the task at hand. So it can be used in 3 different ways. So I'm an engineering manager. I just got hired on. It's my first week of the job. And the boss says, well, you know what? You're just fresh out of school. You're going to improve our cost margin. We need to reduce our development costs. Our development costs are way through the roof. We need to put that under control. Do that. Or they're going to say, hey, we got really good costs, really good products, but they're not selling. The features of the products, or there's something wrong with the product. It's not selling. They're not running over and they're knocking down our door to buy our product. Or it might be, we're doing good now. We want to make sure we're going to do good into the future. And if we're TiVo, which is actually kind of interesting, TiVo did all 3 of these. If it's TiVo, they have new product line out. It's not the same system that they used to have. Not the same product that they used to have. You can't keep selling the same product over and over again. You stay the same product, you're going to go under eventually because technology moves too fast. So you got to evolve your product too. So looking at automating, informating, and strategizing. So looking at the business value, the value added, along with these 3 different categories. And these are generic categories that a lot of researchers have put together. And they call these the reasons why you're investing in information systems. And the reason, it's maybe not even an investing. It might not even cost you any money to do any of this stuff. It's strategic goals of developing the systems or investing time and energy, maybe not money, in terms of putting it together. Because a lot of this can be done using open source utilities in terms of the informating. The strategizing doesn't involve any cost at all from a business operation standpoint. The automating might, depending upon what you're doing. So I think about the concept here in terms of automating. If the summer has passed, but if you compare this summer's art and wine festivals and events, outdoor events, with previous years, actually take it back about 2 or 3 more years in the past. Now you can get on a mailing list. You go to a car show, or you go to an art and wine festival, or you go to some activity as a consumer in the summer in California. You are signing a mailing list on an iPad. You're buying a product and you're paying for it with your credit card instead of having to hold cash with you. Because the iPhones have little scanners, you just put your credit card through it. Or you're able to enter a contest without filling out a little card and sticking it into a little fishbowl or something. You are video recording, or you're capturing the event somehow. Or the person who's doing the event is capturing it. It's like, before we had recording software, before we had cameras on our smartphones, before we had any of this technology, that's called automating. So new technologies come out, consumers figure out ways of using it all the time, so companies do the same thing. They figure out ways of using business technology, as well as maybe some consumer level stuff, to figure out if that's going to make things better, if that's going to automate something. Going back to the value add, there has to be a value add to it in order to justify its use in a business setting. Consumers do stuff all the time. There's no value add. They just think it's cool. Or they, who knows why people take pictures of stuff and why people record stuff when they can get a better recording online. Or there's better pictures of everything you're taking, but maybe it doesn't have the individual in it that you're trying to capture or something. So in terms of automating, doing things faster, so looking at the automated category, if you're too slow, if you can't make your production run fast enough to meet the demands of your orders, then you want to figure out automating. Or if you're making too many mistakes in the order entry, automating. It's kind of like, student registration. They should really have it 100% automated. You should be able to go online, register your classes, pay for your classes, do everything without actually stepping foot on ITU campus. That would be the best scenario, actually. In fact, they could probably do a better job in terms of class scheduling if they fix the automation and boosted it up a little bit. It's not bad if you compare it today with what it was 5 years ago. It's like night and day. 5 years ago, you had to walk in, fill out a form to register. There's nothing online. In fact, they didn't even put the class schedules online, which was actually kind of, think about it and go, I'm glad they automated that. But if I'm a company and I'm thinking about ways and I'm the engineering manager just trying to figure out registration processes or something, and I'm going to apply technology as a solution to this, I might think about more automating or something of that nature. So faster, cheaper, more accurate with greater consistency. It's not always to eliminate headcount. It might just be for better accuracy. A lot of people automate their accounting these days. They don't do anything manually because the numbers can get transposed. You accidentally flip the numbers around or you make a math error. Humans make errors. Computer systems don't normally make as many errors unless the human gives it an error input. So in terms of an example here, loan processing. Comparison of 3 methods. From the moment customer takes the application until the application is notified of a decision. If we look at the manual loan process, actually this happened. This is about maybe 15 years ago, but it was happening up till about, well, when I was graduating from college, it was still going on. You want to buy a car, you filled out a form, and you went back the next day, or the next day after that. 2 weeks later, they called you up, say, hey, you're approved. Or, hey, you're not approved. Now it's before you can finish your coffee or whatever. Here, fill out the form. Oh, you're approved. You're not approved. Here's how much we're going to give you. Sign on the dotted line. Here you go. Buy it now. So it's a lot faster. Faster for home loans, faster for refi, faster for everything. Technology-supported processes, now fully automated processes, 1 hour, 15 days. Actually cut this down. This is like 5 minutes right now. You can go to a retail store, fill it out using the terminal that's being used for your credit card thing. And you just type in your stuff, and they approve you or disapprove you like within seconds. Oh, it's approved. It's not approved. No more. In the old days, you filled out a whole packet. You sent it in the mail, and you waited for them to send you your Target card or your Best Buy card or whatever it is you were buying or whatever. What kind of card? Retail outlet credit card you were getting. Actually, I still remember doing that, actually, which is actually kind of funny because now you just get it on the spot. Okay, so doing things better. So not only was this was speed-oriented in time, but doing it better, looking at learning from processes, improving the processes, and then supporting the organizational learning. If we were doing something better at this school, we wouldn't base the registration on an open lottery in terms of when you're actually registering for your classes. You should be in some sort of priority system depending upon how many units you've completed, how long you've been here, which is like what other schools do actually. If you're a senior, you're ready to graduate, have so many classes you need left, you get a higher registration priority and they register you on priority. Here, if you haven't figured it out, it's whoever gets to the front door first. And it's usually the new students for the most part, because they're the first ones registering for the most part. So they get the best choice of classes, and you think they're brand new. They haven't even taken anything. How come they get the best selection? Anyway, long story short, it's because they're the ones who are signing up and paying their tuition and everything right up front, and you're waiting for registration to start. Anyway, but you can't be new every term. So the longer you stay here, the worse chances you have, or the longer you wait. The lower your chances of getting the classes that you want, which is actually kind of ironic if you think about it. It's like the stampede through the front door. Well, that's informating. So that's how we can improve something here. Other companies have other information problems and other scenarios that might exist as well. It's pretty common actually. Here's an example of another company. So a computer loan-based system identifies peak times during the year when specific loans are processed, winter, spring, summer, and fall. Well, isn't it kind of like the checkout stand? They're supposed to, when the line gets long, add more people. But if you don't know the line's getting long, then you don't add more people. But if you're smart about it, you're a bank, and you know your customers go to the bank during their lunch hour, you're going to schedule your faster tellers to work during lunch hour, or you're going to schedule more tellers to work during lunch hour. theoretically, you'd think. Or here, processing loans, beefing up your computer equipment, beefing up the staffing or something associated with it. So a lot of companies have the retail holidays under control. So they know that seasonal October's, November's, December holidays. Those are the 3 months of the year where retail actually pays attention. But there's times in the other parts of the year that they don't. Actually, you can tell because you say, well, why don't they just make more of that product? If they did, they'd probably sell more. Wouldn't that be more money? Yeah, but they don't know because they didn't predict it because they're not keeping track. They have no idea when their peak sales times are. So, doing things smarter, information system used to gain or sustain competitive advantages, turning benefits of automating and information into strategic advantages, strategizing. How about producing cars in the right colors? That's a strategy. Giving people the right features, anti-lock. Well, we don't have to worry about anti. It was the longest time that anti-lock brakes weren't on every car. It's like, why would they? It's the technology is great. Why don't they stick it on all the cars? Or airbags in cars, or providing a higher level of safety, stuff like that. It doesn't. You don't have to do that. You can sell the car without those features and options, or the XM radio that they're putting now in cars and stuff. But that's strategizing, adding something, creating a color that's appropriate. Doing stuff that's gonna. Like, you see computer companies. In fact, I see it right here. I've got 2 white bios. They did that for competitive advantage because consumers like the white colored computers. I personally don't like black computers, actually. They look old to me. You just add some color to it and then it looks new again. It looks brand new, like modern. So anyway, that's why I put covers on my computer to make it green. Anyway, it's a strategy for competitive advantage. Doesn't really matter. You make it in white, you'll sell more of them. Because your competition is making white computers. So if they got white computers, you got white computers. It's what they did with the netbooks. They started making them in colors, and people started buying more of them. Because they look, like my competitors, Organizational strategies, defining ways in which companies plan to sustain competitive advantages, looking at the types of competitive advantages and the market trends, the low-cost leaders, the differentiation, the focus on differentiation strategy versus cost. Not all about cost, actually. In fact, Apple doesn't take a cost leadership strategy to this. And this is going back again, and I mentioned it earlier a couple weeks ago. This is Porter's model again, looking at cost leadership strategy. The slides, most of the books that I've used for this course are heavily focused on that concept because it seems to be the central theme for the most part in a lot of different strategy planning. So cost leadership strategies, using that as your competitive advantage or differentiation, making yourself different. Focusing on low-cost strategies. Obviously, cost still does play a factor in most business decisions or most consumer purchasing decisions. So you can't really avoid that. Differentiation strategies, probably in a tight market after the product's been out for a while. That might actually be a stronger focus than cost because people will pay a little bit more for something, and then cost is not necessarily the decision factor. They'll pay a little bit more for something if there's some differentiation with it. If they're getting something for the difference, they'll pay it, kind of thing. So the cost strategy is only going to work to a certain point, and then you're going to have to change your focus a little bit. So on differentiation, offering a better service or better products than your competitors, and then focusing on the niche. Here's Apple, high quality computers, home and educational markets. Actually, Apple Computer is differentiated not only by the high quality, but also the operating system. It's more Unix-like. So if you're a developer and you want to have your tools working, you want to go with the Unix system. A lot of people, actually a lot of developers, just put Ubuntu or something, or some Linux variety on their computer and just dual boot it. Because you can't do it in Windows, which is the problem. And that's a differentiation strategy for Apple. They're different from the PC market because they're more Unix supported with BSD Unix on their underlying operating system. So whether you use the GUI or you use the Linux component of it, you got it. Which is what you don't have on the other side of the fence. But they're also more expensive, so they're not necessarily the cost leader. Windows systems are more on the cost level. Best cost provider strategy, providing, and this is Target actually, your Walmarts, your Targets, your superstores. Actually, believe it or not, Target is not that cheap. I have discovered that, and the quality is not there either. But not to cut down Target or anything, but you compare their prices, price per price, with other chain kind of stores in the same category. They're not. I thought they were better in the past. I don't know. So provide products of reasonable quality, competitive prices. That's their source. Actually, Walmart not that cheap either. Actually, Best Buy actually is not too bad. But these are all my personal opinions, by the way. It has nothing to do with any research or knowledge. So, disclaimer number 1. See fine print. I am not responsible for any remarks made. Anyway, sources of competitive advantages. Best made products on the market, superior customer service, achieving low costs, having proprietary manufacturing technology. That's actually kind of an interesting point these days. You know, as I was mentioning earlier, everyone's in the enterprise thinking all products and services are coming from the same place. So what if you broke out of that? What if you're a company and you had some proprietary? What if you have your own shop? That's like the Sony method. They have their own manufacturing facility. They're under control of their own quality, and quality is a big thing for them. They're not going to reuse parts and pieces from competing brands, which is going to be different from like your Sharps or your TCLs or some of the other companies that are out there that are kind of just, they come up out of nowhere. And you're wondering, well, doesn't that look like that other product over there? Well, because they're sharing. They don't have their own proprietary manufacturing. They're sharing plants, parts, pieces. They're just coming out with different brand modeling. So having shorter lead times in research and development, that could also help. Having well-known brand names and reputation, that's also good. Giving customers more value for their money, well, that's always a selling point as well. So in terms of competitive advantages, how do you identify opportunities to use the information systems for competitive advantages? Well, there's Porter's value chain. So I can skip through this because I've already seen it, but if you want more information on Porter's value chain, it's in lecture number 3 of the MISI Information Systems and Innovation lecture series. And I've actually, this overlaps a little bit, which is why I can kind of skip it. This is what we did in the last couple weeks, if you don't remember. We looked at the value chain analysis, coming up with the definition of the value chain, and looking at, in terms of added value for, this is a little bit different, the internet versus the extranets and use of information technology, which is a slightly different focus. This we covered actually already, slightly different lecture presentation, however. This slide here we looked at already, but we didn't look at it in terms of the intranet. And just to clarify what these 3 words are actually looking at, we have public knowledge, public information, public dissemination. That's the WWW, that's the World Wide Web, that's the internet, you know, where the high school kids go download their stuff from. And you go download answers to problems and solutions, and you do your research on. Then we have the intranet, which is the opposite of that. That's held private. That's the WW2 actually, or World Wide Web 2. University research, well, actually that's extra, but university research can be performed on this. Companies have this. So we don't actually, we have it here. We have an EX system here that's intra. It's inside the organization. You can't get to this EX system from outside of ITU. But you can get to the EMS from outside, which makes it an internet application versus an intranet. So it's the inside, outside, intra, inside, which is actually kind of interesting. And then the extranet, that's when you get everybody else as part of you. So you can get outside, inside and outside, but you have like a supply chain management program, and supply chain management is shared among your suppliers. And it's not on the open internet. It's not to the open public. That's public. Not to the public. It's still private. It's within your organization, but it's not just you. It's everybody else's system that's all networked together with you. So being familiar with the models and creating the correct model is sort of key to getting things to work properly with that. So. All right, let's see. This is I'm going to kind of quickly just summarize what's in the rest of this slide set because there's a lot of overlap. We looked at the automating, informating, and strategic benefits. In terms of productivity gains, which is one of our advantages, easily identify costs with developing an IS system because you know your information. You're capturing it, you're able to determine it. Difficult in identifying productivity gains, perhaps, limitations of productivity gains and development. So why hasn't productivity increased at a rate that IS system investments have increased? Well, that's an interesting point. Because people have a tendency to invest in the wrong information systems, wrong information technology. Just because it's available doesn't necessarily mean that your business is actually going to benefit from it. So keeping that in mind will help most organizations maintain more productivity gains. So I'm actually going to stop at this point because this is going to lead into a couple of different scenarios and measuring scenarios in terms of looking at and trying to evaluate, not from a competitive advantage, but from an IT and information systems advantage, how you're going to make use of the technology to kind of, and what technology to use actually, which is going to be different for all companies, but some standards and some summary on that. So I'll start with that next week. So someone remind me, if I try to forget here, someone remind me I'm on this lecture. I had a few questions about the case studies and a few questions about the assignments, actually just a couple during the break here, just for the benefit of everybody else. It says APA on it. That just means don't use a crayon and a bar napkin. That means we use a Microsoft Word document and type it up. You don't have to follow APA format, which means you don't have to have a running header and a title page and a reference list and all that other stuff. If people actually know what an APA format is, there's a lot more involved in it. I just want you to use proper English and grammar and spelling. Maybe double space if you could possibly accomplish that. Use a 12-point font. Write it up professionally. Don't hand scribe it on a bar napkin or on a piece of paper and then scan it into a computer and send it to me. Or better yet, write the content in an email message. Actually put it in a Microsoft Word document. Write it up like a report. You don't have to worry about following the APA, however. Just do it professionally or like academically. The other thing to note is that you don't have to repeat the questions. You can just go 1, 2, 3. And for those people who missed it, last week I went over the first case study. Don't have to repeat the questions. However, you have to answer all of the questions. However, you don't have to answer in the same level of detail or the same quantity of words. As long as you meet the minimum requirement that's specified in the assignment, I believe he said 2 pages, can't remember what I said in it, then all you have to do is make sure you have the proper length at the end. You can do the entire length on one of the questions and then just add 2 sentences or 1 sentence for each one of the other questions. Because some of the questions will overlap with each other. All right, the answers to the questions in your own words, that's what makes it a case study. That's what makes it challenging. No 2 students are going to come out with the same answers. You're not going to find the answers on the internet because it's asking for your opinion. So give me your opinion, give me your analysis, give me what you know, which is going to be different depending upon your background. Technology people are going to answer more technically than business people. Business people are going to have a slightly different perception. So it doesn't really matter. I'm looking for your background information and your analysis when answering those questions. There's no textbook you have to read for it. There's no knowledge. However, if you decide you want to do some research, you can use the slide set. In fact, you're going to need that for Porter's model. You're going to need that for some of the other stuff. And you'll have to surf through the slide sets and take a look and then maybe do some internet research to come up with that. But it's really, this is really a survey kind of course. So if I were to assign you a textbook, it would be like 6 different textbooks. And you seriously don't want to buy 6 different textbooks. So instead, you'll have to be a little creative in terms of what information you need given the background you currently have. Some people are going to need a slightly different type of reading than somebody else. So, questions. Nothing's due until the end of the term, but don't wait till the end of the term. If you do, the system will go down. You won't be able to upload it. So, questions, comments, concerns? Yep, we're done for today then. All done. See you next week. Thank you. This is like week 5 or something, or week 6. I don't know. We're almost a third of the way through.